Nothing stops the train. It's gonna go. The dollar is gonna keep on inflating, and Bitcoin's gonna keep going up. It's just a question of when it all converges.
Sailor's price prediction, 21 years from now, a $21 million coin.
Yeah,
Is
that's
that absolutely crazy for you to wrap your mind around? Or you think that that's possible?
no. I think it's fully possible. I mean, that's like an Omega candle every month or so. And that's in line with my prediction that we're going to go to 1 million fast. See, even Saylor thinks so. Like it's going to be fast and violent, no matter how you slice and dice it, right? If you say his prediction, if you take his prediction in the least violent way, that is like 10 Omega candles a year, right? And that's 1 million in a year. That is the least violent thing. Anything else is utter unspeakable financial market violence. Like that's like, $1 million candle in a year or a $2 million candle in 2 years, and then rapid ascension upwards. And that's all in line with Max Payne theory. So I agree.
Yeah.
Like
Samson Mow, CEO of Gen 3, says nothing can stop this train. The dollar will keep inflating into worthlessness, while Bitcoin surges with what he calls $1 million Omega candles. These aren't gradual moves, they're violent bursts that could trigger the biggest reset in financial history. Mow warns that each burst could look like a financial detonation, with Bitcoin's price leaping by millions in just months. Even the least violent path, he argues, still takes Bitcoin to $1 million a coin much faster than most people are ready for. Anything beyond that means historic market chaos and the collapse of the old financial order. If he's right, this convergence of endless money printing and Bitcoin's fixed supply could ignite the most explosive bull run the world has ever seen, rewriting the rules of finance forever.
discussion about will it be a quick transition off the dollar or a slow transition? I think it's actually going to be a quick transition because fiat currencies always die in a spectacular manner. It's just a question of when. And you also have to factor in that the US dollar is in a very unique position because it is largely digitized outside of stablecoins. Like it is a digital thing. It's reached market penetration that no other prior reserve currency has reached, right? Like it's sort of married itself with technology and ingrained itself in economies around the world. So it might actually take a few years, maybe 5 years, maybe 10, I don't know, but it will end, but it's taking longer than normally it would have. That a non-digital fiat currency would not have this lifespan. If you look at history, like all the reserve currencies in the past were relatively centralized because they weren't digital. But with the dollar being mostly digital, right, you've kind of permeated every other country's financial system in some way with it. And in some way, every single other fiat currency is now linked to the dollar, right? Everything is a derivative of the dollar. If you look at the Singapore dollar, right, it's linked to the US dollar. The Hong Kong dollar is also linked in some ways to the dollar itself too. And then you have other countries that just use the dollar outright. So it's reached really high levels of permeation that we haven't seen in history before. So that's why I think it's managed to hang on this long, even with the astronomical amounts of money printing. But in the words of Lynn Alden, nothing stops this train. So it's just going to keep inflating. And it's just a question of when it hyperinflates. I'm not really sure about that yet. I mean, I've heard the argument that stablecoins are extending the life of the dollar because it's helping effectively deliver the dollar to more people in the world. But I don't know. I still hold a lot of weight in the idea that fiat currencies fail spectacularly, and that's just because when people wake up, they all wake up. It's not like we'll start transitioning off the dollar and the corner store near your house is gonna keep taking the dollar and changing their prices to like $1,000 for a Kit Kat bar, right? It's just going to be a quick thing once that thing hits, and they'll just switch off and take Bitcoin because they can't afford to not take Bitcoin. They can't afford to take the dollar at some point. And I think Germany with the mark dying. That's like a good example. It happened in, a year-ish. And that was a non-digital thing. So I think it'll be faster for the dollar to fail. But
Uh,
until that happens, it does feel like Bitcoin is extending it by integrating with it in some ways. The only thing that can't be done is printing Bitcoin out of thin air, but anything else is possible. So I've talked about rebasing to Bitcoin and just setting a exchange rate of 1 sat to $1. And that just takes a politician, maybe it's Trump, I don't know, but somebody just to say, we'll let you redeem your debt for this. And that's it. I mean, how do you peg a dollar to gold? It's by decree. And pegging a currency to Bitcoin is the same. It just depends on the motivations and the necessity of doing so. I think when things get bad enough, every card is on the table, and we're seeing this, right? Some of those cards are bad cards. It's the rolling out of a CBDC like in Europe, or starting to control the internet like in the UK. There are things that are happening, and you can see these things happening are a direct response to other things that they're trying to mitigate or distract you from. So there are a lot of, just take the UK as an example, there are a lot of societal problems. And now they're focusing on this one particular thing, which doesn't do anything for the other problems, but it definitely distracts and gets people enraged. But it just goes to show, like, every card is on the table now. But that rebasing the Bitcoin card is also, it's in the hands, and it can be played at any time. And that's why I say plan accordingly, because you have to be ready for when these things happen. And the best thing to do to be ready is to be in Bitcoin. I mean, with the ETFs, I would say massive volatility is sort of gone from Bitcoin. Like, I don't think you'll see huge 80% drawdowns in the future, because those are a symptom of a market that can move quickly, like trading on spot exchanges. But for a lot of these new entrants in there, they might be funds that bought IBIT or FBTC or BitB, but they're not going to dump quickly on some news. And a lot of people are putting it in their 401ks or their retirement accounts. They're not watching the market and saying, okay, we got to sell now. So I think you're going to see a lot more muted volatility. And that is good for leverage Bitcoin plays, like a lot of treasury companies. But I still think there is some risk there, because even without an 80% drawdown, you don't know if some of the smaller ones with CEOs that are not Bitcoiners, if they will weather a prolonged dip. And even if it's like a 20-30% drawdown, can they handle that? Are they strong enough to deal with the pressure from shareholders or the board if the board is not fully aligned? And would they sell? And would that push us down further? And I think it's a possibility. But at the same time, you have a very strong cohort of Bitcoin treasury companies with strong CEOs that have conviction, like Michael Saylor and like Adam Back. And Metaplanet seems quite strong too. So I think even if some of the smaller ones capitulated, the larger ones would simply just take all their Bitcoin, right? So it's a question mark if something happens. But I do think there is paper Bitcoin in the market right now. And it's probably some less reputable exchange that is doing something like FTX, because we know FTX sold Bitcoin that they didn't have. So I don't put it past some smaller exchange selling Bitcoin that they don't have. And that's probably one source of paper Bitcoin. Everyone's wondering, like, who could be the source of the paper Bitcoin. I don't think it's Coinbase. I mean, I dislike Brian as much as the next guy, but I don't think he wants to go to jail. So I don't think it's going to be him. But, you can't rule out anything. This is why it's important to hold your own Bitcoin, have your own keys, be sovereign. And in the light of all these potential blowups. That's your safety, right? Using Bitcoin as it was built originally and not keeping it with someone else. If you want to invest in an ETF, if you want to invest in a treasury company, do so, but just know that you're taking on some risk. The zero risk thing is self-custody, and to each their own. Whatever you're comfortable with allocating, then do it, but just know that the safety is Bitcoin in your own hardware wallet.
As trust in banks and governments fades, Bitcoin is no longer just an investment, it's becoming a necessity. It's the exit from a system drowning in debt and dysfunction, with ETFs and even governments now driving demand higher. Samson Mow warns that Bitcoin in your wallet is power, but only if it's protected. Treat it like it's already worth 100 times more, store it safely, stay private. Because when the system breaks, your freedom could depend on it.
Bitcoin is always going to be bearer money. And if you look at the global state of things, trust in institutions is not going up, it's going down. And when that is going down, people seek bearer assets. And, I think we might be blinded to that fact because ETFs are hoovering up more Bitcoin, treasury companies are hoovering up more Bitcoin. But at the same time, Bitcoin will continue to grow in value. And there are a lot of people holding their own Bitcoin still. So I don't see that as a risk because of necessity. People will need to transact Bitcoin because of necessity. It's not an ideological thing. Like, we need to spend Bitcoin because if we don't spend Bitcoin, it's going to fail. It's a necessity thing. And if it wasn't a necessity thing, then Bitcoin would fail. Like, if it depends on us to make people spend Bitcoin, then it's not going to work. Bitcoin works because the incentives work and because deep down, people want bearer assets when things are shaky. And that's just a lesson that history has taught us over and over again. Right? Before it would be gold and silver or bills. Now it's going to be Bitcoin. It's just a question of when they understand that it is Bitcoin. And I think we're getting closer and closer to that inflection point.
Were you shocked when Trump signed the executive order for the SBR?
Well, yes and no. I think for him, it was a low-hanging fruit that he could just do something and say promises made, promises kept, right? It didn't cost him anything. It was within his power to do so with executive order. And he paved the way for, non-budget neutral acquisition. And I think that's all powerful stuff. I think what is lacking now, and many Bitcoiners are seeing this, is execution on that front. Like, where is the audit of Fort Knox? Where is the tally of all the Bitcoin held by the government? And I think we're still waiting for that. And where is the next phase in the SBR? Like, when are you going to put up a website and accumulate? So I think, we should all be holding them accountable, but we should also be fair in understanding that governments are not exactly the most efficient, well-oiled machines out there. So maybe they'll get to it. And I'm more of a glass half full kind of guy. So I think they'll get to it, but we'll see. But I'm hopeful that they do execute on the SBR. But to answer your question, I think it's kind of expected. It was low-hanging fruit enough that he could do that, get a PR win, and get his donors happy. And then the rest is up to David Sachs and everyone else to execute on that.
Is it possible that the United States government is acquiring Bitcoin quietly?
I don't think it's possible. It's hard for any government to do stuff in secret. Well, things that are beneficial for the country, it's hard for them to do it in secret. Other things, it's much easier. Like, you could do a lot of things in secret, but for something like Bitcoin, like an asset, it would be like saying, can you buy gold in secret? It's probably hard. You need to, because it's part of the financial system and you have to be all above board, right? Like, where did you buy from? How is it custodied? There's a ton of questions that have to be answered. Like, it can't just be Trump directing someone in some agency to buy and send it to his Blockstream Jade wallet on his desk, right? There's got to be more controls and process in place for something like that. So I think it's really hard for a country to sneakily buy Bitcoin, even though they should. But I think it's hard. Just like it's hard for them to get to the point where they can't even buy, right? Like the city of Vancouver, Mayor Ken Sim has said that he wants the city to buy Bitcoin for its treasury, for its reserves. But he's said like there's 2 years of red tape he's got to go through to even get to that point. So, yeah, the answer is they could do it in theory, but in reality, they probably need to go through and cross the T's and dot the I's before they can really buy Bitcoin.
So the price is set at the margin. We have, I believe, somewhere around 2 million coins are on exchanges. Is there any way to know out of those 2 million coins? And is that accurate? Is that an inaccurate number?
I mean, it's an estimate.
It's an estimate.
I think it's a fair estimate. Yeah, it's not all for sale. I think it's definitely, it's a mix of exchange-owned coins and also holdings from people on exchanges. A lot of people have, or a lot of hedge funds and I guess trading firms keep funds on exchanges for, liquidity provisioning and trading.
And would those estimates, that 2 million coin estimate, include any of the ETF coins or strategies coins?
I don't think so. I think those would be with custodians.
Gotcha. That makes sense. So if that's the case, in order for us to rip to 1M, do you know what kind of tsunami of capital would need to come in during what kind of duration of time?
Hard to say. I think we should have been here already. So
Yeah.
I would have thought that the ETFs opening the floodgates combined with strategy would have gotten us there already. And this is why I'm one of the believers that there is paper Bitcoin out there dampening the market.
Bitcoin's liquid supply is shrinking fast. Only about 2 million coins sit on exchanges, and much of that isn't truly for sale. ETFs, hedge funds, and long-term holders are pulling supply off the market while demand keeps climbing. Samson Mow warns this creates the setup for violent repricing events, sudden surges that could reshape the entire financial system. Michael Saylor shares a similar outlook, projecting Bitcoin could eventually reach $21 million per coin within 2 decades. The destination, they argue, is inevitable. The only unknown is how violently we get there. Whether it's $1 million a coin in a year or 2 million in 2 years, the supply squeeze will trigger explosive moves. For investors, this moment carries both massive opportunity and historic risk. Do you think Bitcoin's shrinking supply will lead to sudden price explosions? And how high do you believe Bitcoin can realistically climb over the next decade? Let us know in the comments. For more Daily Dose Crypto news, check out these 2 awesome videos on your screen. Click now and we will see you on the next video.